What if everything you thought you knew about Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese was only half the story? Because moments ago, a shocking claim exploded across the basketball world. And it involved none other than Stephen A. Smith. According to viral reports, a locker room incident between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese may have gone further than anyone imagined. And just like that, the WNBA was thrown into chaos. Fans started asking the same question: did things really get out of control behind closed doors? Or is there something bigger happening that no one is talking about? Even ESPN debates couldn't keep up, because when rivalry, pressure, and pride collide, anything can happen. But what really happened inside that locker room might completely change how you see this rivalry forever. The rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese didn't just appear overnight. It wasn't something manufactured by media headlines or created for viral moments. It was real, it was emotional, and most importantly, it was built over time. Long before the WNBA spotlight, long before at ESPN debates and at WNBA trending clips. These two players were already on a collision course that would eventually captivate the entire basketball world. It all goes back to college basketball, where both players rose to fame in completely different ways. Caitlin Clark became known as a once-in-a-generation offensive talent, deep shooting range, fearless confidence. An ability to control the pace of a game made her one of the most talked-about players in women's basketball. Every game she played felt like an event. Every shot she took had the potential to go viral. She wasn't just playing the game, she was redefining it. On the other side, Angel Reese brought a completely different energy. Physical, dominant, and unapologetically confident. She thrived in the paint, controlling rebounds and imposing her presence on every possession. But it wasn't just her performance that stood out. It was her attitude. She embraced the spotlight, leaned into the rivalry, and never backed down from any challenge. Where Caitlin Clark represented finesse and skill, Angel Reese represented power and presence. And when those two worlds collided, everything changed. Their matchups quickly became must-watch events. Fans didn't just tune in for the game, they tuned in for the emotion, the intensity, and the possibility that something unexpected could happen at any moment. Every possession felt heavier. Every interaction felt more meaningful. And every gesture, no matter how small, was magnified by millions of viewers watching closely. But what made this rivalry different wasn't just the competition, was the reaction. Social media exploded every time they faced each other. Clips were shared, debates started, and opinions formed instantly. Some fans supported Caitlin Clark, praising her skill and composure. Others rallied behind Angel Reese, celebrating her confidence and intensity. It wasn't just a rivalry between two players, it became a cultural moment within women's basketball. And then came the transition to the WNBA. Most people expected things to change. New teams, new environments, new responsibilities. The assumption was that the rivalry would fade, or at least soften, as both players adjusted to the professional level. But instead of fading, it followed them. Every matchup in the WNBA carried that same energy, the same tension, the same sense that anything could happen. Analysts on at ESPN started highlighting their interactions again. At WNBA highlights featuring both players began trending almost instantly, and fans, they were more invested than ever. But behind the scenes, things weren't as simple as they seemed. Because when you go from college stardom to professional expectations, everything changes. The pressure increases. The scrutiny intensifies. The margin for error becomes smaller than ever. Every decision matters. Every reaction is analyzed. And every moment on or off the court can turn into a headline. That kind of pressure doesn't just disappear. It builds slowly, quietly, until something happens. And that's exactly where this story begins to take a turn. Because according to early reports, something did happen. Not during a game, not in front of cameras, but somewhere much more private. The locker room, at first, it was just a whisper, small mention in a report that didn't gain much attention. Words like heated exchange were used, but without details, without confirmation, and without any clear indication of what actually took place. Most people ignored it, but then more mentions started appearing. Different sources, slightly different wording, but the same underlying message: something happened. And suddenly, fans started connecting the dots. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, locker room. It didn't take long for speculation to take over. Social media lit up with theories, some exaggerated, some completely made up. But all of them fueled by one thing: curiosity. And in today's world, curiosity spreads fast, very fast, within hours. What started as a vague report turned into a full-blown viral topic. Videos started appearing, reaction channels jumped in. Even casual fans who weren't deeply invested in the WNBA found themselves pulled into the story. But here's the problem. There was no confirmation, no official statement, no clear evidence of what actually happened. And yet, the story kept growing because sometimes in the world of viral sports content, the idea of something happening is enough to create a narrative. And that's exactly what happened here. Then came the moment that took everything to another level. A segment featuring Stephen A. Smith. And just like that, the entire story exploded when Stephen A. Smith finally addressed the situation. The entire basketball world stopped for a moment. Not because he confirmed anything directly, because of how he said it. His tone, his energy. The way he leaned into the conversation, it instantly made the situation feel bigger than it already was. On at ESPN, where every word gets analyzed, replayed, and turned into headlines within minutes, Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back his perspective. This is what happens when you have two alpha competitors. He said, that line alone was enough to ignite the internet. Because even though he didn't explicitly say there was a fight, the implication was enough for fans to start drawing their own conclusions. And in today's world of viral content, implication spreads faster than confirmation. Within minutes, clips of that segment were everywhere. At WNBA fan pages reposted it. Reaction channels broke it down frame by frame. TikTok edits added dramatic music, and captions like this just got real and locker room drama exposed. And just like that, the narrative changed from a possible heated moment to a full-blown locker room brawl. No one saw this coming, because all it took was one voice, one powerful, influential voice to shift the entire direction of the conversation. But here's where things get interesting. Stephen A. Smith didn't stop there. He continued, saying, when you have that level of pride, that level of passion, sometimes emotions spill over. Again, no confirmation, no specific details. But the tone suggested something serious, and that was enough. Because fans weren't just listening anymore, they were interpreting. Every pause, every word choice, every facial expression became part of the story. And then came the explosion. Headlines started appearing across social media. Stephen A. Smith confirms locker room clash, Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese gets physical. WNBA drama reaches breaking point. None of these were fully accurate, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to grab attention, and they did. Because within hours, the entire WNBA conversation had shifted. It wasn't about stats anymore. It wasn't about highlights. It wasn't even about upcoming games. It was about one thing. Did something actually happen between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese? And that question had no clear answer, which made it even more powerful, because uncertainty fuels engagement. It keeps people watching, guessing, debating. And that's exactly what happened. Fans split into different groups. Some were convinced it was real. They pointed to the rivalry, the history, the intensity of previous matchups. To them, it made sense. Course, emotions would boil over. Course, something might happen behind closed doors. Others weren't buying it. They questioned the lack of evidence, the absence of official statements. The way the story seemed to grow without any solid proof. To them, it felt exaggerated, maybe even completely false. And then there were those in the middle, not fully convinced either way, but unable to ignore it because regardless of what was true or not, the story had become impossible to avoid. But what made everything even more intense was the silence. No response from Caitlin Clark, no response from Angel Reese, nothing. And that silence? It added fuel to the fire, because in the world of sports media, silence is rarely seen as neutral. It's interpreted, questioned sometimes, even turned into evidence. Fans started asking if nothing happened, why isn't anyone denying it? If it's fake, why hasn't someone shut it down? If it's true, how serious was it? Different analysts gave different takes. Some tried to calm the narrative, suggesting it was being blown out of proportion. Others leaned into the drama, emphasizing the intensity of the rivalry, but no one had concrete answers. And that's what made this story so powerful. It lived in the space between truth and assumption, between fact and interpretation, between what was said and what people believed was said. But what happened next? Shocked everyone, because just when the story felt like it couldn't get any bigger, it did. Reports began to surface from inside sources. Not official statements, but whispers from people close to the teams. And while none of them confirmed a brawl, they hinted at something else. Tension, real tension. Moments where interactions weren't friendly. Situations where competitive energy felt stronger than usual. Nothing explosive, but enough to suggest that the rivalry wasn't just for show. It was real, and that changed everything, because now the story wasn't just about a possible incident. It was about a relationship, a dynamic between two players that had been building for years. A dynamic that the entire world was now watching closely. And as more eyes turned toward the situation, the pressure increased on both players, on the teams, on the league itself, because whether the story was true or not, it had already made an impact, and the biggest question still remained unanswered. What actually happened behind those locker room doors? Inside the WNBA, the reaction to the growing story was immediate, but not in the way fans expected. There were no emergency press conferences, no dramatic statements, no official confirmations or denials that matched the intensity of what was happening online. Instead, there was control. And that control said a lot. Because when a story this big starts trending, especially one involving stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, would expect some kind of strong response. Something to either shut it down or clarify the truth. But that didn't happen. Teams continued their routines. Practices went on as scheduled. Coaches spoke to the media, but when questions about the situation came up, the answers were careful, very careful. We're focused on basketball. That's not something we're addressing right now. Next question. Those phrases started repeating across interviews. And while they didn't confirm anything, they also didn't completely shut the story down. And that's what made things even more intense, because the lack of a clear denial left room for interpretation, and fans noticed social media discussions started evolving. It wasn't just about whether a locker room brawl happened anymore, became about what the league wasn't saying. Why are they avoiding it? Why won't anyone just say it's false? What are they hiding? Those questions spread fast, and suddenly the narrative shifted again. From speculation to suspicion. No one saw this coming, because now focus wasn't just on the players. It was on the entire system around them. The teams, the league, the media, everyone. Meanwhile, inside locker rooms, the atmosphere was different. According to insiders, players were aware of the rumors. Of course they were. In today's digital world, it's impossible not to be. But instead of panic, there was focus. Because players understand something fans sometimes forget. Not everything that trends online reflects reality. Still, it didn't stop conversations from happening. Quiet ones between teammates, between coaches, between people trying to make sense of what was unfolding, because even if the story wasn't fully accurate, it was still affecting the environment, and that matters. But what happened next shocked everyone, because just as the tension seemed to settle into a steady rhythm, something unexpected happened during a game. Not a fight, not a confrontation, but a moment, a very small moment, that instantly went viral. It happened during a matchup featuring both Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. The game itself was intense. As expected, every possession mattered. Every play carried weight. And the cameras. They were watching everything midway through the game. There was a brief interaction. Nothing dramatic. No pushing. No shouting. Just eye contact. But the way it happened, the timing, the context. It felt bigger clips of that moment spread within minutes. Zoomed in angles, slow motion replays, dramatic captions. This says everything. Look at the tension. Something is definitely going on. And just like that, the fire reignited. Because in the absence of confirmed information, even the smallest detail becomes significant. Fans began analyzing body language. The way Caitlin Clark walked away, the expression on Angel Reese's face, the reactions of nearby players, it became a full breakdown frame by frame. Second by second. But here's the reality. Moments like that happen all the time in sports. Competitive sports. High pressure environments. But when there's already a narrative in place, those moments take on a different meaning. And that's exactly what happened here. The story wasn't just being told anymore. It was being built, piece by piece, clip by clip, reaction by reaction, and every new detail, no matter how small, was added to it. Meanwhile, at ESPN, discussions reached another level. Analysts debated not just the possibility of a locker room incident, but the broader implications of the rivalry. Is this good for the league? Is the tension real or manufactured by media? Are we seeing the next great rivalry in women's basketball? These questions dominated the conversation because regardless of what actually happened, one thing was undeniable. People were watching more than ever before. And that's when the bigger picture started to emerge. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just about a single incident. Maybe it was about something else entirely. Something bigger. The rise of women's basketball into mainstream sports. Conversation. The power of rivalries to drive engagement. The way stories real or not can shape perception. And the way players like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are at the center of it all. But what happened next took everything to another level, because finally, a real response was coming. Just when it felt like the story had reached its peak, everything changed. Because after days of speculation, viral clips, at ESPN debates, and non-stop fan theories, something finally happened that no one could ignore. A response, not loud, not dramatic, not emotional, but powerful enough to shift the entire narrative. Sources close to the situation began speaking carefully. Not official press releases, not headline-grabbing statements, but controlled information that slowly started making its way into the public conversation. And what they revealed was very different from what fans had been imagining. There was no confirmed locker room brawl, no physical altercation, no explosive fight behind closed doors between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Instead, what actually happened was something far more real and far more relatable to competitive athletes. Emotions, that's it. High level, tense, competitive emotions. According to those close to the teams, there had been moments of tension. Moments where the energy between players was strong. Conversations that weren't exactly friendly, but also not unusual for athletes competing at the highest level. And that's when it hit everyone. The story had grown far beyond the reality, because what started as a heated moment turned into tension, then into confrontation, and eventually into a full-blown locker room brawl. In the eyes of the internet, no one saw this coming, because it perfectly showed how fast narratives can evolve in today's sports world, how quickly a small detail can become a massive headline, and how easily the line between truth and exaggeration can disappear. But here's the twist. Even though the brawl wasn't real, the rivalry, that was very real. And that's what made this story so powerful, because at the center of everything beyond the rumors, beyond the headlines, was a genuine cant of tension between two of the biggest stars in women's basketball, Caitlin Clark, a player who thrives under pressure, who embraces the spotlight, and who plays with a level of confidence that few can match, and Angel Reese, a force of energy and intensity, someone who brings emotion into every possession and never backs down from any challenge. When players like that share the same court, there will always be moments of intensity, moments of frustration, moments where emotions run high. And sometimes those moments get misunderstood. But what happened next shocked everyone, because instead of letting the rumors define them, both players did something unexpected. They moved forward. No public arguments, no social media backdash and dash forth, no attempts to fuel the drama. Just focus on the game, on their teams, on their performance, and that decision. It changed everything, because slowly the conversation began to shift again from "did they fight?" to "look how they're performing," from what happened in the locker room to what's happening on the court. And once that shift started, there was no going back. Highlights began taking over the narrative. Big plays, clutch moments, performances that reminded everyone why these two players were in the spotlight in the first place. At WNBA, clips featuring both players started trending, but this time, for the right reasons. Skill, competition, greatness. And that's when the real truth of the story became clear. This was never about a fight. It was about tension, about how powerful the combination of rivalry, talent, and media coverage can be. Because whether people believe the rumors or not, they watched, they engaged, they talked about it, and in doing so, they pushed women's basketball even further into the spotlight. No one can deny that. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway of all, because moments like this, real or exaggerated, show just how far the WNBA has come, how much interest it generates, how invested fans have become in the players, the stories, and the rivalries. And at the center of it all are players like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Not just athletes, but stars, storylines, forces that shape the conversation. And as this season continues, one thing is certain: this rivalry isn't going anywhere. If anything, it's just getting started, because every future matchup will carry this history. Every interaction will be watched more closely. Every moment will feel bigger. And fans, they'll be there for all of it, watching, debating, reacting. Because that's what great rivalries do. They pull you in, they keep you invested, and they make every moment feel like it matters. So no, there wasn't a locker room brawl, but what came out of this story might be even bigger. A rivalry that has officially taken over the WNBA, and trust me, this is only the beginning.